Alright, so my lesson plan that I created for peer relationships and role models involves an activity during a middle school PE class. Considering I will be going into physical education as my major, this is something that I thought was really cool. Um, the goal of this will be that is a one-day activity during a middle school PE class. During this lesson, the children involved will learn how to cooperate with peers and understand the importance of teamwork. Also, the students involved will understand why it is important to maintain a positive outlook with their peers and people that they'll be working with. The standards for that I use will be physical education model content standards for California public schools. I used one social interaction standard and two group dynamic standards. Um, Social interaction is identifying and defining the role of each participant in a cooperative physical activity. Group dynamics would be identifying and agreeing on a common goal when participating in a cooperative physical activity. And the second one is analyzing possible solutions to a movement problem in a cooperative physical activity and kind of come to a consensus on the best solution. The duration of the activity will most likely run around 60 minutes, depending on how long the class really is. It can just be adjusted. The equipment needed would be either 50 to 100 feet of rope or some sort of paracord and two standing poles. Poles aren't necessary. You could use trees or just something to tie the rope in between. The breakdown of the activity would be 10 minutes in the beginning of the class to introduce the topic, and while we're doing this activity, we'll kind of go over the importance of friendships, peer relationships, and a positive classroom setting, and overall just working together to accomplish one main goal or task. 45 minutes will be spent on the activity itself and having the children participate in the activity. 5 minutes of the lesson closure, or will be lesson closure and going over why the activity was important and how it can be used in everyday settings. So, for the activity, children are kind of confronted with the challenge. There are two poles left and right of them that are directly in front of them. In between the poles is this cobweb-like structure that the rope is made out of, holding the two poles together. The goal of this activity is to get each student, through the cobweb structure, but only one student can go through each hole at a time, or each hole once. One student can go over the cobwebs, and one student can go under. Now, for the first 20 minutes of the activity, this is where the hard part kind of comes in. The students are not allowed to talk or discuss their game plan in finishing this obstacle, and with this, it will kind of result in like this chaotic scene of children going through the holes, or maybe just kind of not talking to each other, not really trying to wave at each other or kind of mime things. They might just end up going through the holes and getting to the other side, but not really completing the challenge because people may be left behind or at a disadvantage. For example, you're going to need people to help you over the cobweb structure, and if there's no one really left on the other side, then they can't finish it. Or taller students may have an easier time getting through certain spots, or smaller children may have an easier time going under rather than over. This will kind of create like confusion and lead to an unfinished obstacle. Now, the important part. For the last 20 minutes, students are allowed to discuss and talk amongst one another about their plan and how to easily get through this obstacle. With discussion comes kind of this planning and coordination and figuring out how to go about it and doing like going through each hole kind of strategically. And this is really kind of hitting home on the fact that it is very important to work well with others and kind of be kind, accept different ideas or different thoughts that people may have, and you might not always agree with them, but in the end, it'll just kind of be the one common goal that they all have together. So if they get through it, then that is really good, and the task would be complete. Um, like I said, it'll just be easier in resulting the children like being able to finish the obstacle and actually having rather than kind of having like every man for themselves. And then at the lesson closure, the lesson will kind of end by discussing with the children how they felt when they couldn't talk about like their plan and then how they felt when they could. So normally this is going to end up like having the children kind of feeling upset or like not being able to talk to anybody and not really going over the activity how they wanted to. But then when they can talk to people, it's opening their minds to like different opinions and different ways about going through this obstacle. And then what made it easier, what made it more difficult, and then also how they felt when they could actually work together and offer those opinions or advice. Did it make them happy or were they just kind of wanting to still do their own thing? But in the grand scheme of things, it's going to make the children overall work together and learn to take in different words of advice and work with those people and kind of come to this one consensus to finish this activity. So that was my lesson plan for peer relationships and role models.